Okay. Thank you for making this time, Shoshana. I'm really appreciative of your work and the conversations we have had over some period of time now about the LEAP Fund, how it's working, what it is seeking to accomplish. And congratulations, by the way, because you're the new leader.
Thank you.
Tell
Thank
us
you.
about the work and tell us about your journey too.
Yes, absolutely. So at Leap Fund, our sole focus is tackling benefits cliffs, which is essentially earning $1 or two more an hour, but as a result, losing public benefits that are worth a lot more than that. How Leap Fund started is our founders were a part of the Blue Ridge Lab Fellowship, which is an applied lab space at Robin Hood. It was a four-month fellowship. The task was to create technology and tools for low-income New Yorkers. So it was during just those 4 months that they were speaking and talking to low-income New Yorkers and learned about a benefits cliff. And also learned about how layered a benefits cliff is, because you have people who are actually hitting benefits cliffs, but there's an even larger group of people who are making financially conservative decisions, like not taking a job, not taking a raise, not taking more hours at work out of fear of losing critical public benefits. Just to be super clear, this is not the fault of people who receive public benefits. This is a policy failure. This is a system failure that allows cliffs to exist at all, but also that just creates this whole mystery around benefits, income, how they interact with each other, how benefits interact with each other. Leap Fund set out to both address this lack of transparency that exists. How can we provide information to folks so that they don't need to make fear-based decisions around their life and their income, while also collecting the data and the stories to be able to influence that policy level change that's really needed to eliminate benefits cliffs.
And again, for folks who maybe not be as clear or aware, again, and to reinforce sort of your point, which is the desire for folks to find economic stability, to be able to support economic mobility, requires obviously folks to be able to feel some sense of not just comfort and confidence in terms of what they're making, but actually enough to pay their sort of bills and to take care of all of the different expectations they have in their lives, take care of their families. And when you talk about the benefits cliff, what you're talking about is that moment when, if I take this opportunity or I make this wage or I hit this income level, I lose access to what has been my security or what has been my support that has helped me continue. And again, we're not talking about levels that are, and I don't know how many folks are aware, we're not talking about massive numbers here. Could you give us any sense of what kind of levels we're talking about in terms of income where this benefits cliff kicks in?
Yeah, and I think that question is part of the challenge, is that eligibility for benefits is so individualized on a person's income and household situation. It's really hard to pin down that moment, which is why there's so much misinformation and rumor in this space and so much fear. And it could also happen more than once for folks. So as they're getting those jobs, those incremental raises, there could be multiple points where they might lose a benefit and net gain, like it doesn't actually make sense, or they actually lose out by taking that raise. So this is, I mean, this isn't a real example, but one example we'll often give is, like, let's say you have this person named Tanya. She's working at a restaurant. She's earning around $15 an hour. And she also receives a childcare subsidy, which in New York, that could be like $900. She's doing great at work. Her boss offers her a raise from $15 to $16 an hour. It's just one more dollar more. But if she accepts that raise, she'd actually lose her childcare subsidy. So now, I mean, math-wise, she's at a net loss. That one more dollar an hour is not worth that $900. And very practically, like, that was her childcare subsidy. Like, what is she going to do now? How is she going to figure out childcare for her child? How is she going to show up to work? So, there's this math piece, and there's also just like this really practical piece of, like, these benefits are also offering supports for folks and for people. So you can see how it's a difficult decision for someone to make when they have the information, and even more difficult when Tanya has no idea what that raise is actually going to be doing.
And as you know, I would say, and I've talked about this as someone who is, for me, where I've been in human services for social services for almost 30 years now in New York City. And I certainly have lived the life and the experience of working with clients and folks in the space and colleagues, quite frankly, in the space, where there were circumstances where folks said, I can't take this opportunity because I will lose something that I have access to, I am going to lose access to. And in those circumstances, again, it was not as if there was some giant leap happening. It was simply a matter of an adjustment, potentially. In some cases, someone was going to go from a part-time job to a full-time job, potentially, or in some cases, an increase or a wage increase. And it had an impact. And so that was for folks who might have been, in some cases, initiated. In some cases, they were aware of what was happening, so they were concerned. In other cases, as you pointed out, it was the fear of something happening, because there has been, I think, a lot of I don't want to say confusion is the word, but again, in terms of the clarity, you've pointed out there's different understanding, different sort of metrics or circumstances to think about. Part of your work is about clarifying for the individual, but then also having a policy impact too, so we can understand how the system is working or not working in this regard. Is that right?
Yes, exactly right. Because there's lack of transparency on an individual level. And I think what you're pointing out is like, it's not because people can't figure it out, don't have the ability to figure it out. It's because they are actually not provided with any of the resources. Like, if no one's telling them, the government isn't telling them how these changes are actually going to impact all their different benefits. And then that transparency also on a macro level of like, how do we build the benefits in a way that like provides this transparency to folks and also just like doesn't have these cliffs, because nobody wants this. Like, this doesn't benefit anyone, no matter what your political beliefs are.
That's right. So tell me both about there's a calculator part of this and there's a coaching aspect of this, right? So dig into that a little bit. Explain to us how, okay, I'm concerned about this. I want folks to be aware of this. I know that this is something you have put into practice in some places already. How does it work? What happens? What does an organization that has an interest working with you, understanding with you, how do you work together to figure out how to use these tools?
Yeah. So our main goal at Lead Fund is to tackle these benefits cliffs, and we are engaging and have engaged lots of different stakeholders in that conversation, because benefits cliffs are relevant to everyone, to the people who are receiving public benefits, to the organizations and coaches who serve them, to employers who, like in Tanya's case, like if Tanya can't accept that raise or that promotion or that job, that also impacts an employer's ability to attract and retain talent. So there's so many different stakeholders when we talk about benefits cliffs. One area that we have been very focused on over the past, Lead Fund has been around for 6 years, specifically over the past 4 years, has been our benefits cliff coaching program, where we're working with nonprofits, community-based organizations, and training their staff in how to have these conversations with clients. That way, clients can move away from these fear-based decisions that they're kind of forced to make towards data-driven decision-making. So there are 4 main parts of the program. I could quickly go through all of them and through the calculator, including that calculator. So the first is training and professional development. All coaches, users who join our platform get this asynchronous training around what benefits cliffs are, how that might come up in conversation with the client, and how our tools can be helpful. And we also have like ongoing optional professional development opportunities.
And how long is training?
It's asynchronous. So
asynchronous, highlighting asynchronous. Go ahead.
yes, we love asynchronous. People are busy, myself included. Absolutely, the organizations and coaches we're working with are busy. Right. So asynchronous allows people to do it at their own pace and time, but it should take around 45 minutes. That's mandatory. And then there's lots of optional professional development, especially for people who are looking for that face-to-face time as well. Then once you finish that, you get access to our platform. So that includes first our benefits cliff calculator, which can show how a change in income or household will actually impact the benefits that someone's receiving. So to bring it back to Tanya, if she's weighing this promotion, she wants to see how this raise will impact her benefits, she would meet with a coach who has this access to Lead Fund's platform. They'd walk through the intake, put Tanya's basic information in, and then they'll be able to see kind of that full picture of Tanya's financial situation. How will this $1 raise impact her benefits? But also, how does that next raise? How does that $17 raise impact her benefits, an $18 raise? So you could see not just like this immediate decision, but get that full picture of what someone's finances can look like and like how this might fit into their goals and ambitions. And I mean, in terms of like what choices people decide to make, like we always say, it's not our job to say. Our goal is to provide as much information in as succinct, user-friendly way as possible so that people like Tanya can make the choices that make the most sense for them.
And this is about preparing providers who are in the space, who are working with people in the community, folks who are low income, perhaps seeking to aspire to higher income, thinking about new opportunities. This is educating and informing, right? Based on the tools and resource, and then sharing that information in such a way, okay, to say, let's be clear where you are here and what could come next, or what next is possible. Is that fair? Is that the right framing?
Yeah, and absolutely. Providing some real number estimate and predictions to open up that conversation. So we know this is already impacting people's decision making. Like, let's talk about it. Let's talk about it for real with some real numbers.
Because this is real. This is not something people are, I think, oftentimes, and again, to go back to my own experience and working in this space, this is not something folks were unaware of. There was some sense of awareness about something happening, something having an impact, but that absence of clarity mattered.
Absolutely. So the calculator is there to provide that numbers, that visual, that predictions. But what we also see is that like we know for coaches, for organizations, these could be intimidating conversations to start. Benefits cliffs, public benefits are so complicated, and it's impossible to be an expert on everything. But we also know that like how important these conversations are to have. So we want to tool groups up to be able to have these conversations, provide the resources to open up that conversation. So we also have a guidebook, which includes sample scripts, test cases, some benefits grounding, just like real basics, so that if you're looking for more information, if a topic comes up that you want to learn more about, let's say you're not an expert in disability benefits, but it's relevant to your client, where can you go just to get the language and those basic next steps to learn more with your client? Right. So again, it's the training, the benefits cliff calculator, that guidebook with resources. And then just the last piece on an organizational level is that through the calculator, we are collecting personally identifying information on clients that we are able to share back with organizations. And this is data around how many times is the calculator used? Were people aware of benefits cliffs before? And had they made decisions in the past out of the fear of hitting a benefits cliff? What percentage of clients are predicted to hit a benefits cliff after using our calculator? And what was the impact? How did this impact people's decision making?
All data protected, that is provided, confidential, anonymous. We're not doing anything here that is now sharing with the world what someone is going through. This is about you capturing the information to talk about, I would assume, the value and impact of what's happening. Is that fair to say?
Exactly. The value to the organization of what's happening. And also, I mean, as I said, ultimate goal here is to be able to leverage this for policy level change. So we're also hopeful that the data we're collecting across our partners nationally, that it can be helpful in collecting that data, sharing those stories, and also on an organizational level, depending on capacity, that organizations can use this data as well for their own policy and advocacy efforts.
And where is this happening now? You referenced national. We know there's some pieces happening here in New York City as well. How many folks, how many users, how many organizations, how many folks are gaining and understanding at this tool, and how many folks are they working with?
Yeah, so we've been running this program for 4 years. We started in 2020 as a pilot with 10 organizations, expanded that to 40 organizations in 2021. And for the past 2 years have been running our updated platform, our updated calculator. So we're working, I think, with close to 50 organizations nationally. We've trained, I mean, in 2023 alone, I think we've trained close to 500 coaches, reached close to 1,000 clients. So we're working with a lot of groups, and of course, looking to find ways to get this into the hands of more people, to reach more people where this can be helpful and relevant for.
And to bring it back to the beginning here a little bit, how did you find your way to this particular organization and the work that you're doing? And now, I mean, you're the leader of the organization now. I know that you've grown within the organization too. So tell me about how you found your way and how you're making your way.
Yes. Oh wow, this is such a real and like especially now an emotional question too. I joined Leap and started in 2018. I joined towards the end of 2019. So about a year in, with Karen Sholkoff, who co-founded it with Caroline McAndrews. And when I joined the end of 2019, it was part-time, 10 weeks as a program associate. I heard about benefits cliffs and was just like honestly shocked that they existed. I mean, there are plenty of broken systems out there. To me, this felt particularly shocking that like a system was just working completely counter to how everyone intended for it to work. It seems like a really just universally ridiculous problem to be having, and also a really overwhelming problem to fix. So what I found in love with Leap Fund is how we've taken this really complicated problem and have broken it down of how can we use user-centered, people-centered technology and programs to begin to tackle this in a way that's like real and helpful on the individual level. So even for this coaching program, like yes, policy level is the ultimate goal, but on the way to build and collect that data for that policy level change, how can we provide actual support to people on the ground while we wait and we push? So fell in love with Leap Fund, the work that we're doing, and also just like the social impact tech approach to building, moving, and iterating fast. I've grown a lot with Leap Fund. When I started, we were focused a lot on the employer and how to engage the employer in this conversation. Pandemic hit and how we all know how we engage employers shifted a bit during pandemic, and that's how Karen and I got together and started this coaching program, and have been a part of it's the coaching program's journey as we developed it from pilot to beta, and now have been lead on this coaching program for the past couple of years, and have also been working with Karen on all things Leap Fund, on the data side as well, how we can utilize the data we're collecting, but also just large scale data sets to start to really ground this problem of like how many people are impacted by benefits cliffs, and some of the other research projects that we've been running as well. So it's been a really cool journey for me to be able to grow with Leap Fund as we're in this super exciting moment now of like, I mean, this is all where we're at now is a testament to the work that Karen has done, that we have built Leap Fund, built our calculator, built our coaching program, and have proven success, that we're at this place where this transition can happen, and we can kind of keep continuing the important work that we're doing, and also start to really think of like, what's next? How do we reach even more folks?
And is that what's next? Is that now in your leadership tenure, now that you've stepped in, and how are you thinking about the future?
A great question. I am a month in, so I'm sure
the first month is the first month is always the most challenging. After that, it's a breeze. It all comes naturally and comfortably. Tell me where you, at least give me your initial reaction. I mean, you've been part of the organization long enough, I think, to reflect on both what you've seen that has been successful and probably what you want to build on. So just as you picture the future, what are you thinking?
Yeah, so I know I've been focusing a lot on our coaching program because as our signature program where we've been focused a lot over the past 4 years. And I do think, especially in this next year, it'll be a lot of continuing the efforts that we're doing there, thinking about what are industries that benefits cliffs can be coming up the most in, and how can we reach those industries. So Greg, that's why it's been so lovely to have these conversations, because we know in workforce development, that's just a really obvious place where these benefits cliffs are coming up as people are training and looking for new jobs and anticipating new salary bands. We're seeing it come up in all types of financial coaching and social work. We're seeing it come up in guaranteed income pilots, as people are giving these cash infusions, thinking about how it might impact also people's public benefits. So definitely thinking through like how we can engage with certain industries. We've been doing work also to engage with certain like place-based initiatives. So we've been doing work in Louisville through the Reconstruct Challenge with Louisville Urban League, Neighbor Network, Choose Well. I think Neighbor Network includes like 60, I think we're working with 16 of their like 30 or something organizations there. So we're partnering with a lot of organizations in Louisville and thinking of like, how can we engage an entire community and bring an entire community around this conversation for benefits cliffs. So those are some ways in which we're thinking about like, how can we reach more people through our coaching program? The other efforts that we have around the data and the storytelling. So we've had a chance to speak about benefits cliffs to Congress and op-eds, at conferences. We made benefitscliff.com where we're sharing research and pilot and work that's happening around benefits cliffs. Research through our coaching program, through different research projects, like through the, we've worked with the Financial Health Network and Neighborhood Trust and ICA group to assess how mandated wage increases for home health aides, how that might impact their benefits.
Huge.
So on that research and data side, also definitely thinking about how we can continue those efforts, continue to leverage the data that we're collecting in the most meaningful way. So definitely on the coaching program, the data and storytelling, that's where we're focused a lot for this coming year. And also hoping on the employer side that we'll have some more learnings from some of our past engagements with employers.
And you did reference, was it Louisville? Is that where you're referencing? Is Louisville an example of a place that New York City or New York State, the state itself, the city could learn from in terms of what's happening there or what's been happening on the ground there? Just kind of picking on this idea of, I think New York City, New York State probably has a lot to learn in this regard. There certainly are we know some champions, elected officials and others who are aware. I think as you noted, there's a desire to educate and inform so that there's clarity and awareness that these cliffs exist and we need to respond and address those. So there's the individual awareness and there's also systemically, what are we doing to think about this? Where do you look to say, here's a place you can learn from? Here's something we've learned from another place, perhaps outside of the city or outside of the state, that you think we should be looking to as some sort of guide.
Yeah, Louisville in Kentucky is a really interesting example because they are doing some pretty cool benefits cliff work. So there was actually Kentucky passed some legislation around creating a benefits cliff task force to start learning more about benefits cliffs and starting to learn more also from like an employment perspective, I believe, how it's impacting things over there. And I think it's still in progress, but I think they have some like initial recommendations and supports, which is kind of how we got connected to Louisville, is that there is a lot of conversation around benefits cliffs and how to provide that transparency. So it's been cool to be working on the ground with organizations within this context of like policy work is happening and bringing together these organizations to learn from each other and how they talk about benefits and benefits cliffs, but also like there's opportunity there to see how like where else these conversations can land and how it can connect to the policy side. So Kentucky is doing some interesting work. There's actually a lot of pilots happening in many states. I would definitely recommend benefitscliff.com has a great list of some of the pilots that are happening. There's some happening in Ohio and Massachusetts and Connecticut. A lot of these pilots are thinking about like, how can we bridge the benefits cliffs for people? So if you are going to hit a cliff, what funds can we provide to kind of smooth that cliff out so that it makes sense for you to take that job in the race, and how will that benefit people in the long run, in the long term? So there's also some interesting pilots happening there. Also, New York is doing some cool work too. I know NYCETC has been doing a lot of work on the state level with the income disregard bill that was passed, and I know they also did work for a benefits cliff task force. So all of these are like good next steps to start thinking about how can we on a policy level provide transparency, how can we bridge the cliffs for people so that like on an individual level we can it can make sense for people to advance in their careers, and how can we start to mitigate the cliffs also? How can we start to adjust the policy, the regulations themselves so that benefits cliffs ideally don't exist at all, but like even in the income disregard case, like how can we just mitigate the effects of them? So maybe they exist for less benefits or for less folks.
I appreciate you framing that and taking us to this place in the conversation, which is to say, we have a great relationship with NYCETC. We've worked closely with NYCETC on focusing on income disregard bills, the establishment of a task force that really is work in progress in some ways, especially on the task force side, to be able to push for that and to continue to push for that. So this isn't something that is just conceptual or something that we have to fight for every term, but rather is something that we see the results over time. We've learned what we needed to learn so that we can actually advocate for policy change. So I appreciate you sort of teeing that up too, as we dig into this. Final thoughts on what you'd like the folks who watch this, read about this. Final thoughts about what you'd like them to remember or to know in terms of what they should take with them following this conversation. What's most important, and how would you like them to get active and motivated and you know, be in support of the work ahead if this is of interest? And certainly it should be of value to the community that we're connected to.
Yeah, well, I will say if you are a part of an organization, if you're working with folks who might be receiving public benefits, might be hitting these benefits cliffs, definitely get in touch. We would love to find a way to support the work that you're doing, make your job easier, and also be able to provide that transparency for the folks that you're serving and that you're working with. On the policy level, I know, Greg, we've had a lot of conversations around like, so how do we fix benefits cliffs? How do we make it happen? And on the one hand, it's a really intimidating thing to work on, intimidating thing to address. I think now there's really momentum around benefits cliffs. And when we first started, people who received public benefits, they all knew what a benefits cliff was, but we were doing a lot of education of just like the basics of what a benefits cliff is. And that's really shifted. A lot more people are familiar with it. There's a lot more pilots, work, research, a lot more organizations that are really directly addressing benefits cliffs. So I think this is really a moment where change is possible. And I mean, there's a question of where do we focus and what's the best way to start pushing for change. But there's certainly so many different ways that we could start providing this transparency, bridging these cliffs for folks, and really starting to change the policies themselves to mitigate and eliminate cliffs. So I'm excited. I'm optimistic.
I'm excited as well. We're looking forward to continuing the conversation. You know, as you know, there's a citywide election cycle, which may have many different versions. This coming year, there's a statewide election cycle following that. We're going to be thinking and talking about the workforce agenda. And as we focus on economic development projects, and as we focus on strategic investments in workforce development in all these different ways, we are acutely aware and continue to absolutely be active in every way possible to create better opportunities for New Yorkers to be able to move towards economic security and mobility. This is a key part of that conversation. So we're with you all the way. Look forward to continuing the conversation from here. And congratulations on the new opportunity and the leadership of this particular organization at this time. As you said, it's urgent, it's necessary, it's valuable, and it seems as if there's some opportunity here. So I look forward to working with you to take full advantage.
Oh, thank you, Greg. Thank you. And thank you for taking the time to talk. This is so fun.
This is great. Thank you so much. I'm going to stop the recording now.